Do you ever feel like you're not making any progress even though you're putting in the hours? You show up, you study, you immerse, you're doing all the right things, but progress still feels slow. You're past the beginner stage, but not fluent yet. And the worst part is, you don't even know if you're doing something wrong. This is what's called the intermediate plateau. And yes, it's real. So let's break down what it is and, more importantly, how you can push past it. Alright, so when you first start learning Japanese, you learn the most useful words first. Makes sense, right? The top 1,000 words cover roughly 70% of daily Japanese. Get to 2,000 and you're at about 80%. Those early months feel crazy productive because des, suru, iku, taberu, you see these words everywhere. When you're seeing the same words 50 times a week, they're really easy to remember. But as you get further into immersion, they start to show up way less often. There's this thing called Zipf's law, and it applies to basically every language, not just Japanese. And it says that the frequency of a word drops off exponentially based on its rank. So the most common word shows up twice as often as the second most common word, and 3 times as often as the third most common, and so on down the list. Which means that every new word you learn appears less frequently than the one before it. And the problem is, if you only see a word once a month, you're probably going to forget it before it shows up again. Your brain needs multiple exposures to really lock it into your memory. But at the intermediate level, the gaps get too big, and you end up relearning the same things over and over again, and progress feels slow. Japanese especially makes this worse because you're also learning kanji at the same time. Common kanji are everywhere, but some of the rarer ones you might only see once in an entire novel. And every time it's the same thing. You struggle to remember, so you look it up and you think, okay, I'm definitely gonna remember this time. But then you forget it by next month anyway. And this is why so many people get stuck. You got the basics down, like the everyday stuff is fine, but going further means that new words start appearing less frequently, making it harder to notice and remember them. So how do we fix this? Well, even if you immerse every single day, you're still going to be stuck if your input is too limited. So what I mean is that Japanese has different domains of vocabulary, so to speak. If you only watch one type of content, you only see one domain. Everything becomes kind of predictable. The topics repeat, vocab repeats, and you're simply just not getting enough exposure to new words. Now, you don't necessarily need to watch harder shows or force yourself into something you hate, you just need variety. For example, a travel documentary gives you descriptive language and storytelling. A cooking show exposes you to a ton of practical verbs and kitchen vocabulary. And a gaming stream might expose you to a ton of slang, fast commentary, and casual phrasing. If you only consume one type of content, you keep getting fed the same set of words on loop. Your hours might increase, but your vocabulary won't. When you mix in different types of content, you increase the number of words you encounter without increasing the hours. Now, variety helps, but it doesn't solve the whole problem. It makes the less common words show up more often, which is good. It helps you notice them and understand them in context, but it doesn't guarantee that you'll actually remember them long term. Okay, so variety helps you find new words, but how do you ensure you're actually going to remember them long term? Well, the answer is spaced repetition, which is a way of reviewing information right before your brain is about to forget it. And the gap between reviews gets a little bit longer each time, which makes your memory work just hard enough to strengthen the connection. Funny enough, I was actually doing this for years without even knowing the term for it. When I started learning Japanese 20 years ago, my tools were very simple. All I had was a notebook, a pen, a couple of textbooks, some handmade flashcards, and that was about it. No smartphone, no apps. I had my own system where I would add new cards to my main flashcard deck and review daily. And once a card became familiar, I'd move it out of the main deck and into another deck that I only review once a week. And if I still knew it after a week, I'd move it into another deck that I only review maybe once a month. Again, I had no idea what spaced repetition was, but I was somehow doing it anyway, and it actually worked. But now we have SRS apps like Anki that make the whole review process so much more efficient. You create the cards in the app's algorithm tracks how well you know each one, and automatically schedules to show you the cards right before you forget them. Plus, you don't have to carry around a giant stack of physical flashcards like I did. But I will say, it's still not effortless. Creating the cards, adding definitions, examples, and context could take several minutes each. And if you do 15 to 20 cards a day, it all adds up. And for busy learners like myself, I often felt like I was spending more time making cards than actually immersing in the language. And there were many days where I'd actively avoid it just because I would rather be immersing instead. Something that has worked incredibly well for me though is Migaku. And this genuinely solved my problem and makes card creation super easy. It integrates with YouTube, Netflix, Disney+, and generates cards directly from the content that you're consuming. It's super simple. You just hover over one of the subtitles, the definition appears, and from there you can automatically generate a card in seconds. It grabs the word, its definition, the sentence it's being used in, the translation, and even extracts the audio and a screenshot from that moment. So less time creating cards and more time actually immersing. You can also do the same with photos using its OCR tool. You take a photo of any Japanese text. It can be a short sentence, a street sign, or even a full page from a novel. And Migaku takes it and turns every word into clickable text, and from there you can generate a card just like you would from a video. Essentially, you're creating cards from real-world text with minimal effort. It also offers courses in several different languages, and it just works better than anything else I tried. So if you want to try it, there's a free 10-day trial. And if you use my link, you get 10% off the lifetime plan and 1 month free with the standard and early access plans. At the end of the day, what matters most is picking a system that you'll actually stick with. Something that is easy to use, that becomes part of your routine, that you don't have to force. Okay, so keeping these words in your memory is critical, but even that isn't enough. The real test is using them to build sentences from scratch. You see, there's a point where input can only take you so far. You can follow conversations, you can catch the meaning of shows, you can read manga, and that's good and all, but when it comes to expressing your own thoughts and opinions, well, that's where a lot of people struggle. You see, your brain knows how to recognize Japanese, but it hasn't learned how to produce on its own, and not enough people talk about this. Recognition is passive and creation is active. They're not the same skill. It's easy to consume Japanese and feel like you're improving, but it's much harder to sit down and force your brain to generate something from zero. So people end up relying on familiar phrases, and when they need to express something a little bit more complex, the brain goes blank. Not because they don't know enough, but because they lack the skills of putting together ideas in real time. And this is the real problem. Assembly, production of language. And the hard truth is that no amount of input alone will make you fluent. This is because when you produce language, your brain is doing every job at once. You choose the structure of the words, the particles, the transitions, the emphasis. You're deciding how to connect all the ideas in real time, and if you haven't practiced this enough in Japanese, your system just overloads. This ability only grows through practice, like real practice. And that means sitting down and building sentences from scratch until the production part becomes automatic. And it takes time and a lot of effort, and anyone who's telling you otherwise is lying. So how do you train this? Well, the usual advice is just speak more, which is part of it, but there's more to it than that. You see, English and Japanese don't follow the same logic, and this is something that a lot of people miss. If you default to English logic when you try to produce language, your Japanese will always sound unnatural because you're trying to force Japanese grammar into English framing. And this is where active listening helps, the intentional kind. You're not just listening for meaning anymore. You're paying attention to how Japanese people frame their ideas. Not just what they say, but how they say it, where they put their focus, how they connect their thoughts, why they choose one phrasing over another. When you start noticing this native logic, your brain finally has something to work with when you start building your own sentences. And this is where input and output start working together. So to practice all this, I suggest starting a daily journal in Japanese. And this is, in my opinion, the single best method to start training your brain to output. And the goal here is to build your own sentences using the knowledge that you already have. Like, don't look anything up, just try to recall from your memory. So I usually use Google Docs, but you can use whatever tool you like. Start by writing about something simple, like it could be about your day, something you watched, something that happened, and try to explain it with depth. Like, really push yourself to connect ideas. Try to frame things the way you've been hearing Japanese people frame them. And you're gonna get things wrong, and that's totally normal, but this is not about perfection. This is how you turn passive understanding into active skill. Just 20 minutes a day is enough, and when you're done, try to get some feedback from a Japanese friend or a language partner or a Japanese tutor. And this is so you can see how a native speaker would express the same idea. And that correction is what forces your brain to notice the gaps and learn from them. So journaling is great because it's low pressure. You can slow down, experiment, and actually think through your Japanese. Over time, it starts to feel more natural and automatic, and that's what helps build the confidence to make the jump to real Japanese conversations. So yeah, getting past the intermediate plateau takes much more effort for less visible progress. Remembering vocab becomes more difficult, and producing your own sentences feels a lot harder than it should. And that combination makes it feel like you're stuck even though you are improving. And now you're building the skill that actually leads to fluency. And it takes time, but that's the part that matters the most. But at least now you know why it's difficult and what to focus on, so keep going because you're closer than you think.